All right. Scott, do you want to start off?
No, I'll let you and Kendra Joe have the honors.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody who's here. This is a public meeting of the Town of Mount Desert Broadband Committee, and we have a number of people from that committee joining us, and some who are not members of that committee, but interested residents in the town. So thanks for everybody for being here. This committee has been going on for a while, but it kind of went quiet for a number of years and started up again about a year ago. And we've added some new people to the committee and are trying to invigorate our activity and figure where we want to go. And through all of this, having COVID change all of our lives, I think we all realize how invaluable good internet service is as we go through Zoom meetings for our work, our kids engage in school, we have doctor's appointments and everything else all online, and find that we almost can't live without good internet service. And also realize that not all of us have that. So the committee had set up some goals for itself and for the town. And that would be a future-proof infrastructure. And generally speaking, that would, the Cadillac version would be fiber to the premises so that we would have universal accessibility. Every home or business that wants it has it available to them. We would want to have an emphasis on digital inclusion to make sure that we bring everybody in the town along and that it is affordable for everybody to use. So those are the four goals: future-proof infrastructure, universal accessibility, digital inclusion, and affordability. And as a part of this process, we want to make sure that we do things in conjunction with the town, not for the town. So we try and bring other people into this conversation and figure out what we have, what we need, what we want, and how we're going to get it and pay for it. And so as a part of that process, we sent out a survey to all the residents of the town of Mount Desert, sent it by mail to property owners, and then made it available for everybody to fill out either a paper copy or an online version. And we had a little over 250 respondents to that. And most people, we found that about 78% of the people who responded do have cable service through Spectrum or Time Warner. And a smaller amount, I think 14%, have services through a DSL connection with Consolidated Communications. We have a 4% who using cellular or mobile hotspots. About 1% have a fiber optic cable network connection, and about 2% actually have satellite services. So we have also found that there's a range of satisfaction levels with the existing services, whether it's concerns over reliability, speed, cost, of services, et cetera. So there are a range of things, and the committee is delving into all of the responses, doing a greater analysis so we can figure out where we want to go. We also know that right now there is funding from state and federal resources that if we were to make a change and expand services where it's not, or move into a fiber network, that there might be funding available to help the town pay for such services. So, but it's a serious consideration, and we need to get all of our ducks in a row to make sure we're ready to get those funds and make good use of those funds. And a big part of that is a community engagement process. And so these public meetings are all a part of that. We want to make sure we know what we've got, we know what the town wants, we know what the incumbent service providers can offer and what their plans are. We don't want to duplicate efforts, and so we want to make sure that we're all moving forward in a positive way. And we also know that the Hancock County also has some funds that they are going to be dedicating to broadband services around the county as well. And so they too will be working with different communities to help them move along whatever way makes the most sense. So that's where we are as a committee. And as a part of our community engagement process, we've had a series of different public meetings. We met with the Maine Broadband Coalition and the Connect Maine Authority. We work closely with and are so grateful for Kendra Jo Grindle from the Island Institute, who's helping us through a lot of this work and process. We had a meeting with Susan Corbett, who is the head of the National Digital Equity Center based in Machias, and hope to be doing more about community education around the digital age and how do we bring everybody on board and be as digitally literate and digitally inclusive as possible. So today's meeting was to meet with the representative from Spectrum, who provides service to most of the town. And so we're grateful to have Melinda Kinney join us today from Spectrum. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kendra Jo Grindle. Take over.
Thanks. Thanks everyone for joining us. I'm just going to set a little bit of the tone for this call and some expectations. So if you are on and you'd like to be on video, feel free to turn on your video. We do ask that you stay muted throughout most of this call so that we're not getting feedback or anything during the call. If you are having trouble staying connected online, you can dial in by phone and I can pop some of that information into the chat so that you can have it. We're all well aware of internet struggles, especially in the evening time. So feel free to dial in if you're just not being able to, if it's hard to stay on or you're starting to break up a little bit. We do ask if you have questions throughout tonight that you put them in the chat. That way we can kind of parse through them and prioritize the ones that Melinda can answer. There are areas that I'm sure Melinda can't answer, or she would redirect you, specific to your own personal customer service or your needs as a customer of Spectrum. We're really going to focus tonight on what the future of connectivity in Mount Desert looks like, expansion, Spectrum's plans, Spectrum's current service, and trying to stick more to that conversation. We do have some questions teed up, but with all of that said, I'm going to open it to Melinda to just, if you could take us through your current service right now in Mount Desert, as well as any plans for expansion or upgrades within your network.
Sure. Thanks, you guys. Is it possible to share my screen? I have a presentation that I was just going to walk through with everybody.
Yes, you should be able to share your screen, but
Okay.
if not, let me know and I'll handle that.
Okay. All right. Let me just make sure I share the right thing. Not that anybody wants to see any of my emails that are happening. Wait, did that? Hang on. I don't know if you can see that. Hold on. Sorry. Oh, hang on. I have a bunch of windows open.
I can do it if you like.
Yeah, I don't know where it is. Like, it doesn't have, I think I have too many things open. Do you know what I'm saying?
Why not? I'll take care of it then.
Yeah. Okay. You can do it. Thanks.
All right.
Okay. Okay, great. So yeah, I mean, you can jump the first two slides of this presentation. Well, first of all, my name is Melinda Kinney, as I am with Spectrum. I was formerly with Time Warner Cable, so I've been with the company in Maine since 1997, and have really seen kind of an explosion, obviously, in broadband. So it's been a really interesting progression as we've, from 1997 to today, and how broadband has really evolved, and especially, kind of accelerated in the last year and a half since COVID. But so Charter's footprint across the United States, we provide services in 41 states, and offer all, we have 4 services. We have our traditional kind of video service, if you will. We have our broadband service, a landline phone service, which is actually a voice over internet protocol, but it's not over the open internet. And then obviously we have broadband. We also offer services to residential customers as well as business. And the business customers, even the ones in Mount Desert today, can get any level of service that they need, whether it's the service offerings for businesses are very different than they are for our residential customers. And so they can get direct fiber connections today and get, enterprise level of service. So whatever basically they need, they can get. We have 53 million customers have access, or 53 million homes have access to our services nationwide, and we have 750,000 miles of infrastructure. You can hop to the next one, and I think that kind of catches some of the things that I was just talking about just kind of a customer base. So yes, Charter or Spectrum is a massive company, but with that, I think comes a lot of benefits, and it has a lot of benefits for our customers in Maine. You can hop to the next slide, please. In Maine, we provide services to 294 communities. We have over 448,000 customers, 7,000 miles of cable plant, and we have 680 employees. And as I was mentioning before, I think sometimes larger companies can sometimes get kind of a bad rap, but I will tell you that this is actually, I feel like, a great benefit to the state of Maine. Every year we invest at least a minimum of $55 million in our infrastructure year after year. I mean, this has been a number that I've seen grow every year since I've been with the company. We, obviously are a large contributor of local and state taxes, up to the tune of 39 million just in the state of Maine. So the company, has an expansive footprint, but it also has a lot of resources. I mean, even, with hopefully tonight we don't have a massive, a lot of outages, but if we do, we've got a fleet of bucket trucks and, techs that are ready to splice fiber in the middle of the night. And we can always draw upon our other systems across the country to help us out when times get tough and we get these unfortunate storms that happen. I wanted just to add, so one of the things before, when Charter acquired Time Warner Cable, they really provided a lot of services in rural areas. And that is one thing that's been consistent through this acquisition, is just a really high focus on expanding our footprint in more rural areas. And US News and World Report actually rated Spectrum as one of the top providers for rural areas this past summer. And so I just thought that was kind of an interesting connection to note that, while Time Warner Cable had been operating for about 30 years in Maine, and actually acquired Adelphia, which was one of the Mount Desert systems, Spectrum for quite some time actually started in the more rural areas. So you can hop to the next slide, please. So we were talking about affordability and digital literacy or digital inclusion. One of the programs that we offer, it's called Spectrum Internet Assist, and it's for families who have kids on the National School Lunch Program or seniors who receive SSI benefits. And basically, families have to qualify for this service, but it's a 35 by 4 megabits per second broadband service for $17.99 a month, and it includes the modem with that. And so I guess the only caveat is that it can't be a current customer, but if they haven't had our service within 30 days and are eligible, they can get the service. And, and so that's, above, a little bit above the federal standard right now at 25 by 3. I don't know if that's going to be increasing or changing. I would assume it will be, as things kind of progress, but it's still an option that we have for folks who can't afford the service. And then the next slide talks about the FCC's Emergency Broadband Benefit Program. And we are participating in that and are working with the federal government and families that qualify for that program to offer to offer a savings, for their service, which is $50 a month. Then the next slide is really just well, the map doesn't look so good, but we've done quite a few projects with the town over the past few years, and I just highlighted a couple that were more significant. I mean, in 2019, we did a kind of a hybrid Connect Maine. The town did a bond, and then Time Warner Cable, well, actually that was Spectrum at the time, contributed money towards the costs to build out to 325 homes. and 2009, we did a similar project with two different areas with like 203 homes and 55 homes. So our infrastructure right now throughout the town, our network is available to 2,050 homes and businesses. And so that's what we call kind of our homes passed. So it's not necessarily how many customers we have, but it's really like how many people would have access to it. It is a hybrid fiber coax network. We are, in most instances, doing, obviously fiber to the home in new build areas. But one of the things that I, don't know if folks are aware of, and is that, as we upgrade, this network is scalable, I guess is what I want to say. And that as we upgrade to the different DOCSIS platforms, that is going to allow us to offer higher upload speeds and faster download speeds. And so you're going to see a transition over the next few years to kind of a more symmetrical, but yet higher upload speeds. And for instance, like right now in Cable Labs, it's which is it is what it kind of self-explanatory out in Denver, and over the DOCSIS 4.0 network, we're actually testing over a hybrid fiber and coax network, basically what you guys have today, a 10 gig symmetrical service. And so that is actually in test mode as we speak. And so the network is absolutely scalable, and the company is highly attuned to continuing to invest in that. And then down the road, it's hard to say what's going to get kicked around. I mean, there are different technologies where we're driving fiber deeper into this particular hybrid fiber network that we have. A majority of our network is that, and so there are absolutely upgrades in scalability provisions that are be coming down the pike. And then I think the next slide is really our current services. They are the standard pricing, and then there's promotional pricing, but really most of what's not really reflected here are the packages. So most people really don't just take one of our services, but they can, with the exception of our mobile phone service. So we have a mobile phone service offering that is available to our customers who have our broadband service. And we have an agreement with Verizon Wireless, so it rides over the Verizon Wireless backbone. But when you're out on like a Spectrum network, it toggles between that, and it's a very low cost, unlimited data, like $25 a month. And so it's something that actually is a nice kind of a benefit to save, potentially save folks money on their wireless service. I have it, and with my 2 teenage daughters, and it's fantastic because it's unlimited data for like every month. So anyway, but I just wanted to provide you guys with at least a sampling of kind of what the service offerings are. And then I think that's it. So you can hop into questions. I wanted to kind of keep it short and sweet, but just kind of provide an overview. The other thing I would say too is that we can, and we're working with about 80 different communities right now, looking at line extensions and potentially like in areas where we maybe don't serve, and potentially using ARPA funds to kind of supplement the cost of the build. So Charter would contribute a certain amount of money towards the cost. And if it didn't meet the ROI, then we would have, then we could look at like a potential cost share. Sorry, it's been a long day. So anyway, but yeah, happy to have that conversation with you guys. And if you have areas that you want us to look at, we can certainly put a survey together and provide that cost analysis for you, so you could take a look and see what that would look like.
Great. There's just a clarifier. It says Jerry Miller was just asking on one of your slides, you said 81% of rural areas are provided with broadband. Is that number based on premises passed or premises served by your service, like current customers?
I'm sorry, what slide was that on? Was that on one of the national slides? Yeah, that's a
There's
national
slide 2.
Yeah. So that is on the amount served.
Okay, great. So thinking, a little bit into, well, we can start kind of minute and think big picture, or go the opposite way. I guess my first question for you, Melinda, is based on kind of where you wrapped up a little bit of, what you're trying to currently do to upgrade systems.
Mhm.
Are you, or not you, is Charter potentially going to upgrade systems that line up with the build specs for the state of Maine? So broadband being 50/10, build standard being 100/100 symmetrical.
So a lot of, I guess the short answer is I guess, yes and no in some respects, in that like when we do a lot of our new line extension areas, our speeds are 1,000 by 500, and that's what we've really just started to launch recently. And then as we, I don't want to say no, but as we move into the new DOCSIS platform, we will be upgrading or increasing the upload speeds, because right now we have a gig. Right now 940 by 35 is available everywhere today in the town in Mount Desert. Like that is the top speed that we have.
Okay. And your line extensions you said were fiber based middle mile, or fiber based all the way to the premise?
All the way to the premise.
And is there any plan to upgrade the previous infrastructure to also be fiber to the premise instead of having fiber in some places and DOCSIS upgrades in others?
I think that the company, there is not one defined plan that has like kind of trickled down to my level. I will tell you, I know that there are a lot of discussions around, there are different technologies being tested and actually implemented now that are like I said, driving, fiber deeper into the footprint over an existing HFC network. So I haven't been made aware of like what, specifically like any time frame for when that's going to happen, like nationally or universally. But I just know that a lot, like most of all of the new builds that we're doing are fiber to the home, or even line extensions in existing areas are generally fiber to the home as well.
And Jonathan Winthrop just asked a question in the chat. If you could clarify the hybrid coax option, as well as expand on the link with Verizon that you found.
Yeah, so most of our network, like cable was really built on more of it's called hybrid fiber coax. So it's a fiber optic backbone. And then from like the pole to the home is a coaxial line. And so that's generally the kind of like the standard architecture for like traditional cable companies, but our services aren't like DSL service where the like the signal or the speed degrades as you get away from the central office. It's consistent from wherever, if you're at the end of the road to the beginning of the road, it doesn't matter where you are within relationship to kind of like some of the like the network gear, if that makes sense. And then our mobile service that we have an agreement with Verizon basically to be able to utilize resell their wireless services or through under the Spectrum name. So it's an agreement that we have. So our service rides over Verizon Wireless's backbone when you're wireless.
That's helpful. And yeah, please continue to add questions into the chat as things come up or you need clarification. That's really helpful. We have some questions that were generated before the meeting, but we'd love to hear from what those on the call are interested in focusing in on. So you talked about, so the speed over distance doesn't degrade, but so Mount Desert, MDI in general, sees a huge influx of seasonality. And so the systems that are being upgraded or being put in place moving forward, would customers potentially see a decrease in speed throughout summer months or different times of day when there are many more users on the system and much more demand?
So when a customer signs up for our service, like if they have like our standard 100 by 10 service or the 940, that's a service that is, guaranteed to be delivered to their home. So, to your question, but then let me back up. Then what happens within the home is another story, as we know, like whether you've got, a bunch of kids or, working off Wi-Fi, gaming, whatever, people are on Zoom, that sort of thing. And then we balance the network to be able to accommodate those influxes. I mean, obviously, we know Maine is a highly seasonal state, and we've been managing that for many years. And so our network is prepared and capable of doing that. And we're constantly in the field, doing upgrades to, like making those balances within the architecture accommodate those influxes of of seasonality, as well as new builds and people moving into the areas. And if people do have issues with their services, I mean, I don't know, Kendra, how much you guys have had discussions around speed testing. I mean, there are a lot of variables that go with that. Or a lot of times what we find is people don't have haven't had a service call in a really long time, and or their wireless modem is out of old and they need to be replaced, or their cable modem. I mean, so there are just a lot of different. So I guess the short answer is, if people are having issues, you can certainly filter those to me and I can get it to our field ops team, and it could identify an issue that maybe somebody hasn't caught, or it could be a squirrel chewed through the tap. I mean, you just never know.
Sure. Thanks for expanding on that. So I'm going to go a little bit into the chat again. So Carrie was interested to hear about the differences in service options for businesses and residential. Can you go over that a little bit more? And is it true that no matter the type, size, or address of the business, for example, if someone runs a one-person micro business from their home, can they access different internet service options than someone without a business in their home?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so even if you're a resident in your home today and you're like, I want a business level service, you can get that. I mean, it's not, you could call it, Melinda Kinney's business, and get whatever level of services that you want. And again, we will do a direct fiber connection to that home. And so, yeah, so any business today, I mean, we can provide, multi-gigabit symmetrical services if that's what's needed or requested.
That's helpful.
It can be customized, I guess, is an easier way to say it.
Great. And then just kind of following up on the conversation around mobile, unfortunately, it sounds like in Mount Desert, Verizon is not necessarily the best cell phone coverage. So yeah. Do you see Verizon expanding, or AT&T is definitely there a bit more substantially, potentially Spectrum going over another cell phone provider's lines?
I'm not aware of that happening. I mean, I'm not aware of that happening. I mean, that would be I know that would be a national undertaking from the company. But I can certainly find out if there are any opportunities, or that Verizon is going to be doing any tower expansions, and find out. I can work through kind of I have some good contacts with Verizon Wireless that I could talk to in the state and find out. So I know personally I have some issues in Falmouth, so I'll ask about that too.
There you go. Perfect. And yeah, continue to ask in the chat. So looking more at Mount Desert, now that we've covered some cell phone service issues, but looking at Spectrum, not every single home in Mount Desert is connected to Spectrum or served by Spectrum. Are there current plans in the next 3 to 5 years to see 100% connectivity in this community? Or what would that pathway and conversation look like with Spectrum to ensure that every premise is served by your service?
I think that's why we're here today. I mean, I think we are absolutely I think as we were saying at the outset of the conversation, like, now's the best time, to really take a look at getting universal coverage, and how can you do that in the most cost-effective way. And that's something, if you guys have certain areas that that you want us to look at, then, I can absolutely get surveys done, mapping, cost estimates, and then what would it take to provide that universal service to the rest of the area.
What's typically the timeline that you've seen with communities that you've worked with along the coast or in the state of Maine to get from sort of that identifying areas through to funding and or build?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it kind of depends on how far along some of the towns are, right? Like some of the communities have like, done kind of extensive research on what areas that they want, looked at, or that, what roads that they have. So, I mean, I think the more, information that you guys might have, that helps us. I mean, but it usually, um, you know, I guess I'm trying to think about like how to give you guys an estimate. I mean, it may be, if you provided information, like let's say today, right? It's over in November, and we would take, could get survey information back and potentially cost back within like maybe 4 weeks. And then, the town made up its mind. I mean, it depends on how fast you want to go. I mean, it usually takes a year to build the infrastructure, right? Because you've got, like, say we started today, we would have to submit for pole permits because we don't own the poles. And the pole permitting and make ready process is what takes the longest. The pole owners have like 6 to 8 months to get those poles ready for us to attach, and then for them to release the permits so that we can attach. But once we get that green light from the pole owners, then it usually only takes our team about 2 months at the most to get our infrastructure up, and then get the plant up and running for customers to get signed on.
And do you feel like, at least in the projects that you've had in Maine so far, do you feel like most of those have moved forward quickly or, substantially, when the town was able to secure additional funding to support Spectrum's build out, whether that's from the state or local?
Yeah, and actually, I mean, we are in the process of getting, like, for instance, an agreement, getting some agreements in place with some of the coastal communities that we had been working with, and we're getting all of those things like locked down, and I think we'll start applying for poles immediately, and the company, especially in projects that have been reviewed and vetted, that money from the company is being held in a reserve to be able to fund and move forward with those projects.
And do you foresee Spectrum's supporting towns to seek state dollars in the next, there's a $7 million grant round at this year, there's potentially $450 million going to the Connectivity Authority. Would Spectrum be a willing partner with communities to seek that level of funding?
Yeah, we're very interested in the new Maine Connectivity Authority and how they're going to, be set up, and, working with them. And then actually it was the USDA that just came out with a Reconnect program, which is another like $1 billion for broadband expansion. And I think I've got a meeting about that next week. It's just getting rolled out. So I have a high level summary about it, but so that's like another, I think, kind of a newfound, bucket of money for states and municipalities to be able to utilize. So absolutely, we're open to partnering with municipalities and towns on these things.
You've touched a little bit on poll process, so I'm going to stick with it for just a second. Spectrum doesn't own any polls in the Mount Desert area, is that correct?
Right, that's correct.
Do you know if there's any plans at the PUC or amongst poll owners and those on polls to make that process a little bit easier or make it more accessible for communities to move forward broadband projects?
Yeah, so the Maine PUC has actually been leading the charge for most of the states in the country on pole attachment reform, and I think it was the end of April. I guess what I need to double check on is like when it kind of goes into effect or into when it actually is going to be implemented. But they implemented a process called One Touch Make Ready. So instead of like if Charter applies to or Spectrum applies to go on the pole, and then they wait for everybody else has to move their infrastructure, they have a contractor that is cleared to do everybody's, like move everybody at the same time. So it's a lot more efficient, and that should expedite that pole attachment process. I mean, I think, and then they're actually just opening up another rulemaking right now that it's more about pole, like kind of how you allocate the cost of pole replacements, because that's another issue that is obviously very expensive when you're deploying broadband. If the pole has to be replaced, and a lot of them a lot of the poles currently are shorter, and then, and obviously they're replacing them with bigger poles that can accommodate more infrastructure. And so that, and like an inventory is so they're in the middle of like their kind of like last and final phase of kind of pole attachment reform, but they did enact this one touch make ready, and I need to find out, and I can circle back with you on when that kind of goes into effect. I don't think it has yet.
So we're gonna, I think for some of the questions, it's making sense of how best to utilize the service that already exists from Spectrum in the community. So there's probably a couple of questions around this, but I guess first is, what would the cost be, both from the provider side, but also from the resident side, to bring fiber all the way to the premise for those interested? Do you have a price per foot for expansion for communities?
I mean, that is like I think one of the harder questions to answer, just because you can say that, like an average to build a mile of fiber, it's like $50,000 to $60,000, but that's not, when you're talking about like a residential extension, it's very different. And I think it depends, and I know it depends on, how far that stretch of homes is from, the existing infrastructure, how many poles are there or needed, or is there even a pole line available to attach to? So, are there additional amplifiers, or what exactly needs to be done to make sure that that's the service being delivered to that home is going to, be able to, provide like what services they're buying. So it's really hard to say, but if you guys have certain like roads or areas that you know of, I mean, please email them to me, and we can add them kind of to this global list or this community list more so, and then take a look at that and get some estimates. And we can do it by road. I mean, we can do, I was just, I know we've done a handful of pretty good size extensions over the last few years. So, but if, there are other pockets and areas, we should absolutely take a look at them.
Thanks, Melinda. You talked a little bit about residents connecting to business, right? A fiber to the premise at any point to get a business level package. Is there a way for, residents, particularly down a road that isn't served yet by Spectrum, there might be 5 or 6 homes on that road, to hook up to a fiber line that's going to a business at the end of that road? So, they already have existing cable and share that business line, or would that have to be each individual subscriber pays for that fiber line down?
No, I mean, what we would do is probably, I would have to, I can double check, but I mean, generally, the fiber counts are multi fiber counts, right? Within that, like one strand of fiber, like they're like 28 like fiber counts. So it's, or whatever the number, I mean, there are multiple ones, but I guess, it depends on what level of service that the business that's at the end of that road has. But I can certainly, but usually we can tie into like that infrastructure and pick up other customers, and we would accommodate for that for each of those customers, and the price would be, obviously would accommodate that change as well.
Okay. And for those who are interested in maybe going down that path to expansion or getting a better quality connection, should they reach out to you? Should they be calling, someone on the business side of things, on the residential side of things? Can you just give a little insight into where they should direct their question?
Yeah, we have an enterprise team, and I can get the appropriate contact for if it's like a in-home business or just like kind of from the business team. I can certainly get that and share that information. And I know that they have some like packets of information around the different services that are available. So I can email those to you guys after as well.
Well, one of the last questions I have here is, so the Broadband Committee did a really substantial survey recently, and I believe it might still be up. If those on the call haven't taken it yet, to put some information in there. And overall, I mean, as Kathy mentioned earlier, there are quite a few Spectrum customers currently in Mount Desert. So that was a bulk of the response and who the provider was of record. There was overall just some dissatisfaction on reliability, speed, cost, things like that. And those concerns were raised within the survey. Can you talk a little bit about what the Broadband Committee or the town could be doing with those survey results to, in the short term at least, better improve Spectrum's quality of service and care within the community, so that at least the customers that are currently getting service are getting a quality service for the price that they're paying?
You know what, I mean, if they're okay with you guys sharing that information, I don't know, with privacy issues, I don't know if, if you have addresses and they're okay with that, I would love a list of, and then be able to hand that over to the person in charge of our field operations team. And then literally have them do a look up and a diagnosis, and they can kind of see what's going on, at least externally, and then even potentially doing a follow-up. I mean, I absolutely would welcome that opportunity. And I know our area vice president of operations would as well. We'd love to fix it. I mean, sometimes we just don't know. And again, like I said before, I mean, it could be a whole host of issues. I mean, just maybe they just haven't had anybody out to their home in a long time. And, the network is exposed to the elements of, Maine. So sometimes, especially with the salt air and, the freezing temperatures, it can make some significant impacts.
Yeah, absolutely. That's helpful. And so I'll leave that to Kathy and the committee to decide if there's a way that they can share some of those results or connect better, and maybe capitalize on this relationship for the customers that are currently in existence in the community.
Yeah.
So a question that came up is this is a little in the details, but is there Spectrum fiber heading down Route 102 towards Southwest Harbor? In the past, we were not able to access cable, even though it went right past our house on the main road.
I would need to ask somebody from our construction team, because I don't know off the top of my head, but I can certainly ask. So.
And what is there a pathway for residents who, they can see on the poles that there is fiber or Spectrum equipment going past their house or right past their road, but haven't been able through just the residential pathways to get access?
So, I mean, generally, you can tell kind of where cable is, obviously, but sometimes if it's a transport line, that then we don't hook up or they can't connect customers off of that. But if there's somebody that lives Kathy, do you have like a specific address or something for this question about heading down Route 102?
I do.
Okay.
That's us. I mean, we've lived on that road for 30 years now. And when cable was first coming in, it's on the main road. And, everybody described it as, this is a phone slick, I think was the term. And we knew that Southwest Harbor was getting cable and it was going right past our house, but we were not able to access it. So we're wondering, is that true of fiber as well?
Yeah.
So,
do you want to email your address to me, and then
Sure.
I'll follow up. I have no idea. I don't want to
make this all about me, so.
No. Listen, it's good. It's good for me to look up. So I would, that'd be great.
For anyone else, I'd just please, I'd say we're probably about 15 minutes out from wrapping up, but please throw questions in the chat. If there's anyone from the select board or committee that has a question to ask, please ask away. This is the opportunity.
Yeah, Melinda, Scott McFarland, I'm actually the chair of our Broadband Committee. So I'm hearing, I think we all agree that the fiber is going to be future-proof as the backbone to whatever system we have. And so I'm curious, maybe you said this before, but if you had fiber cable, fiber running throughout the island, and then it's just a matter of a house feeding off it using that coax hybrid model that you were talking about. What is the capacity of the coax cable from the fiber system?
So, and I can grab, like one of our engineers too, to have that, kind of dive into that a little bit more. But it, as it's been described to me by our engineering folks, like it's really dependent upon what technology and like software, that is being deployed. It's like, so when I had mentioned this DOCSIS 4.0, which is coming down the pike, and it's being tested right now over this hybrid fiber network that I was talking about, we're going to be able to offer 10 gig symmetrical services off of that existing infrastructure. And that's in the foreseeable future. And then I've heard our CEO in other, conversations, talking about, not that I'm hanging out with him all the time at all, but like different, meetings, but, talking about like, looking at other options for, like I said, getting fiber deeper into the network. But I don't, as it's been described to me, this HFC network is scalable. And I'm not aware of it having kind of a cap or a limit, like I said, as it's been described to me. It's just really more around like what software and equipment, kind of is being used to feed that, kind of feed the services to that home.
And then a follow-up question, then I'll be done, is so where existing cable is, if you were to replace that with fiber, I know the cost of fiber itself is more expensive, but is it somehow less expensive because you already have the permitting for the poles and all that? Does that make it somewhat easier or not?
So you're talking about like replacing an existing like coaxial drop with a fiber drop?
Right.
Actually, I don't know. I have to add.
Yeah,
I have to
that's
ask.
okay. Thank you.
You exceeded my knowledge base, so but I'll find out.
We have one more question that came in the chat from Lily. What are you most excited about for opportunities in rural areas when it comes to connectivity?
We actually have 3 projects with that are going to be lit up, if you will, at the end of this year. It's Swanville, Etna, and Newburgh, so that's pretty exciting. Just that there are areas that have never had broadband services before, but I think in general it's really exciting, especially through this process. Like we're working with St. George and Westport Island. Like there are just so many. I'm so excited about these different projects just to expand services and seeing more people who haven't been able to get, connectivity before, to be able to, really make that happen. And I think that's going to just really make a big impact on the Maine economy and everybody's lives. And so, I think I'm just excited about those opportunities in general. I just think it's great. And, we've been really fortunate to provide services to a lot of the different islands. And, we're excited about, some of those projects as well. And, we've got some RFPs out for certain other island areas. And, we're hopeful that, we can kind of work on getting those, actually up and running.
So you talked about you named, a number of communities throughout Maine that you're hoping to complete build on over the next few months.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any for a community that's just starting to engage and potentially might end up down a path, might not end up down a path of expansion of spectrum? Are there any barriers or words to the wise that you could give to a community that's just starting, based on the conversations and path that you've had with the communities that you're getting ready to build out in?
So I'm not quite sure. So are there any, just to reframe or just restate your question, like, so are there any barriers to like working with communities that are in different stages, if you will, of like planning? Or I guess maybe I might not have understood your question.
So while you've gotten some communities all the way to build at this point, I can't even think of the communities that I even work with, St. George and West and in Swanville. Yeah, I think just now that you've done this several times and Mount Desert is, they're just now surveying, they're still looking at a myriad of options. Is there anything that you would share with a community that's at this point that you've learned from the communities that you're getting to build with?
Yes. Okay. So a couple of things. One, we've done, I feel like our guys know Mount Desert like pretty well because we've done such extensive surveys, especially with that last project in 2019. I think they like memorized the roads. But I will say like what's really super helpful, and it does sound crazy, but we know where we are, but we don't know where we're not. It seems like counterintuitive or logical, if you will. So to the extent, if you provide me with a name of like a road with the house numbers on that road, we can expedite and get up and running really quickly with a survey and an estimate, and that will expedite the process really, really quickly. So I think that those two pieces of information are super helpful.
Yeah, that's helpful to hear. And just to clarify and be direct about where you need service in the community, which I think, through surveying and conversation and continued conversations like this, the committee and the town will hopefully be able to identify a little bit better exactly where the service is lacking.
I'm
Scott,
wondering, along that vein, Melinda, do you have like a map of Mount Desert showing where all the fiber is run,
Yeah, so I have access to a bunch of different maps. I can provide kind of a high level one that shows kind of in general like where our network is. But if you want like a more detailed shape file map or something that's going to be more granular, then we can do an NDA and then I can provide that for you. But we have to get an NDA put together for the more super detailed. I mean, to show, like I said, the extensive coverage. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, but then I think in some of those cases, like you have to have like a certain mapping software. Personally, I don't have that on my computer. So I mean, I get like these, shape files, if you will, and it doesn't mean anything to me, but I'm also not a mapping person. So, but yes.
I just say that because it's hard for any of us. It's hard for you or us to plan if we really don't really know where the service is available, where it isn't available.
We can certainly start with a high level map to give you provide an overview of kind of the areas in general where we are, and then you can see where the plant stops, and then you can basically see some of the kind of like pockets that maybe don't have the service, and at least that's something to start with. And even if you have like, what do you call it, like I wonder if like an E911 list or something for, like, say it's like Smith Road looks like it doesn't have any service. If you had like a number, like so we could put Smith Road, house number 108 to whatever, you know what I mean? Like that, we could kind of back into it.
We have been doing a bit of work. We have been, as a town, part of the Vetro fiber map cohorts. And so they have done some mapping for us. And when we did this survey with the town, the location and then the service that they're getting is tied into a location on their map. So we have some of the data, but we still need to massage it. And not everybody in town responded to our survey. So we still have a bit of work to go to say where things are and where things are not. So.
And the other thing too is Spectrum provided mapping data to Connect Maine for their mapping data request back in September. So, hopefully as they kind of compile all that information, you'll see, I think it's going to be aggregated. So you'll be able to at least kind of see where all the different providers are within the town. So that I think that, I don't know what their timing is on that. Kendra Jo, do you know? Or have you heard?
Yeah, I mean, that map, I think the request closed just in the last week or so. So schools should be updating that map in its entirety. I've already seen some updates to it, but I don't think it's completely done. I think there were some providers that got stuff in last minute. So that should be updated over the next month, probably before the next board meeting, would be my hope.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah. So.
And that mapping would provide information from all the different providers around the state?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good.
And then I think Kendra Jo, don't they like list it out by speeds or something too?
Yeah,
Like
it's color coded by speeds, and
Yes.
it's color. The reason they did the update is because of the changes in the service levels
Yeah.
between served and unserved and broadband. So there are additional colors to that map. But there will be a challenge process for the communities to go in and say, this, areas of this might be inaccurate. So there will be a challenge window that opens to allow communities to put in some data, and then the providers to come back and correct or challenge back. So there is some kind of challenge window around that data, knowing that in some areas it's not as accurate as others.
And I think what's going to be really challenging is because all of these projects that are in the works, whether it's like ARPA, RDOF, Connect Maine, the mapping data is just such a snapshot in time. I mean, obviously, there are so many different projects. It doesn't reflect like what's coming down the pike or what's going to be available, in 2022 for, with all these other projects, like I said, that, that all the different providers are working on. I mean, I know, like I said, Consolidated won a significant amount within the, rural digital opportunity fund. And then, like I said, there's these ARPA funds that are being dispersed right now. So it'll be interesting. And I think we're just going to have to do more mapping and get more mapping data routinely. So.
Great. So we're bumping up close to 6:30. I would say for the select board members on, for the broadband committee members on, if you have any lingering questions or if anyone wants to throw something in the chat, we can wrap up with a couple more questions. Otherwise, Matt.
Yeah, I just had one quick question. I know the last project we did to expand the network to, what was it, 325 homes, that basically boiled down to the town subsidizing spectrum to meet your like a 7-year ROI. And I'm wondering, sort of in that same vein, like when these things like DOCSIS 4.0 roll out, my guess would be that, it just makes sense as a business. You're going to implement that where you get your most bang for the buck at first. And living in a rural area, we often end up on sort of the back end of where those things are implemented. So do you view spectrum as being open to, like I said before, we did sort of an expansion, but would you think that your company would be open to the same sort of subsidy system for network improvement, whether that be through DOCSIS 4 or even like more nodes within the current network or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, that the project that we did, the 325 homes, I mean, it was partially subsidized, but I mean, it was, the company contributed over like $600,000 to the cost of it. Like, so we are absolutely going to be implementing all these upgrades in real time as we are in all these other areas. I mean, the company has schedules to roll these out, no matter if it's New York City. I mean, we have all the same services in Maine are available in, every part of the country. So, I mean, it's very consistent across the board, and we are constantly upgrading and splitting nodes and adding, CMTS, all the, different equipment that we need in our hub sites and our head ends. So it is, in order for us to stay competitive, it's happening, and it's not going to wane at all. And I think that's, again, one of the benefits about a larger company is that the investment is going to be there, and it's not going to falter. I mean, it's going to be, continuing to grow for sure. So, and I don't think
you would see like a rollout of major network improvements or higher speed offerings. You wouldn't envision us lagging that far behind some of the larger urban areas. Okay,
no,
thank you.
Not at all. No.
Great question, Matt. Yeah, so I would say for those on the call, this isn't the last time you're going to hear from the Broadband Committee, and this call was one of several as they look at what the needs in the community are, what the pathway forward for the community is, and really looking at a community-wide solution that's affordable and equitable for everyone. So with that, I will hand it back over to Kathy, and we can start to wrap up. And if there are next steps, you can put those out there.
Great. Thank you very much, Kendra Jo, for moderating this. And thank you, Melinda, for joining us. it's good to hear directly from the company that has most of our services lined up. So very helpful. We are recording this. I think the town will make this available to anybody else who's not able to be here today as soon as that's done in the next couple of days. And so thank you all for joining us, and we'll call this to a conclusion. Thanks very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.